We'll give it a minute to warm up. Enjoy the view. Haven't been down here in a while with you guys this spring, mostly because it was about probably over my head. We'd be sucking in some water if we'd have been here a few months ago, with all the snow melt we had going down and everything. But hope everybody's doing well. Wrapping up your week, getting into a weekend. My signal says I am good, because I had been here before years ago, and it was really kind of spotty. But it says cell signal has improved since then, so we're going to try it, see what happens. But I didn't want to do a short because I wanted to get a little more into it, more than just asking the question. Validating your thesis, defending your thesis. If everybody's familiar with the term, the reason you do what you do, right? And reviewing and validating that on occasion, if not regularly, if not daily. Validating the plan that you have gotten into or taken yourself forward with. And years ago, pause, dadgummit. Hold on here. And we're back. Sorry about that. I had a bat phone call. Hold on. What's up? Yeah, thanks for holding it down there, Gnostic. Boneyard, what's up? Man, I lost my train of thought then. Thanks for jumping in, guys. Yeah, there's the prison alarm. Exactly. Helps you know. Um, yeah, the prison's that way. It's not that far. Wait, no, the prison's that way. Uh, Validating your decision making, right? Your plan. Years ago, when I got on here, my primary number one focus was the economic instability of the US dollar, right? And I've maintained that pretty much throughout this journey. That's been my primary numero uno concern, I think, in dealing with what we're dealing with and doing why we do what we do. And how do you go about validating that? And, as you go forward, you learn more and more, based upon your initial decision, your initial thought. So I initially, got the information and evaluated the information on the fiat dollar and the lack of backing and the eventual destruction of the dollar through debt, right? And then you move forward and you learn a little bit more and a little bit more about all the other things that factor into that, such as other currencies and what happens when the dollar comes home and all the hyperinflation to devaluation and how that affects everything else and what you need to be prepared for in that process, right? So that's kind of the things I've went through and learned, figuring out that not only could it be an economic calamity for us, but the world. And then you go into the thought of these are the types of things that lead to war. And the worst case scenario, this is kind of how you get Chinese troops falling out of the sky and stuff. To kind of take it to your kind of worst case scenario thought process, right? Evaluating where it could all lead, and what you really can only prepare for what you can prepare for, right? And do what you do, and what you can control yourself, what you can control your exposure to. And so, like I said, it's been over 10 years now. Completely try to isolate yourself from paper markets is what I did, right? Trying to, if I don't hold it, I'm not relying on anything that I can't possess on it preserving any type of value, right? So that's kind of what I was planning on. And then we see the events going on today, and I have to revalidate my thesis, right? I have to look at what's going on with the strength of the dollar, presumed strength, and how that affects everything going on around us, and the what seems like an eventual march to war for no reason other than to preserve the value of the dollar so that the banks can continue to suck up all the value of U.S. resources, which is essentially what's going on, in my mind. At least that's what I see, right? So that's how I validated my plan, you know. I think I am still on track with the same plan as that being my most likely in my lifetime event that I have to worry about. Have an earthquake that is a scenario that I have to worry about, but I think I've got a lot of those short-term concerns handled. It's the bigger stuff that could really have a higher calamity prospect that I was kind of worried about, and that's really the only one. But there are things that can happen in addition to that, right? So I guess the thought is, have you validated what you prepare for? Tons of people on here have to validate yearly with tornadoes and hurricanes, and go through that process because they are directly in the line of fire from those almost monthly, and they get a break here and there. But you got hurricanes going up the East Coast again. And we had a semi wannabe hurricane here. It just turned into rain, but something you never thought you'd see is it even getting close to being aimed at us, but it kind of stumbled into Nevada and dumped a bunch of rain in spots. But that's, short-term recovery stuff that we can deal with. If you have basic preparations for everything else, things like that can come around and be like, okay, we got this, right? So then there's, think about our second and third order. But again, going back to your original reason why you started prepping, have you ever thought back and evaluated where you're at now compared to that and compared to what's going on? Whatever that reason might be. And just encourage everybody to do that, to see where you're at and to see what you have in place to continue to improve your position. Don't just sit around. Not that anybody sits around, but we sometimes sit around, and don't get complacent or whatever. The whole Wuhan coming around and everything kind of put people in a different mindset to a certain extent. But what are the things that creep out of that? Government overreach, extreme rule of law, things that we've talked about 10 years ago that kind of crept in a little bit there. Like, okay, what's this going to do? What's that going to do? You have this guy in Pennsylvania escape, and all these, somebody, I guess it was the equivalent of 2 battalions of police forces roaming the countryside for this guy. Like, how does that creep into your decision-making process and into what you got going on, So throwing that out there on this great Friday lunch break. Hope everybody's doing good. Thanks for checking in, everybody. Agnostic and Boneyard up front, and I had to deal with the sound pause there. Boneyard got his plan, make it through anything or die trying. Yeah. And you want to branch out, right? You want to, once you think you're pretty set for your original, what you're most concerned about, branch off and look at, well, there's this problem and this issue, and this hazard, you got whatever else you have locally that you have to deal with. I talked about it not years and years ago. I think it was like 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe it was during the Wuhan, about how you have to evaluate seams and political divisions, and how that affects your locality. While places where there's seams and in society, and where society erupts against each other, is going to be more violent and have more unrest than places that are more cohesive and like more dominant by one group or another, right? Or you could be in the middle of an insurgency area where you are, depending on resources and depending on all kinds of factors. Like I talked about here with Carson City being the political structure, political center, filled with people from Vegas who are blue who come up here to operate, being surrounded by red, like that can cause a lot of friction, even though you feel like you're in a pretty safe political environment. But state capitals in particular are high friction zones, potentially in the future or now or whenever. Like we saw those Capitol protests. I think it was during when the Wisconsin Capitol got invaded or whatever years ago. I think I brought that up. So evaluating all kinds of different possibilities in your area that you could be exposed to. Railroad tracks, railroad car overturns. Have you thought about that if you're close? How close do you need to be for a chemical spill to really affect you? How far away are you? Because those plumes can go pretty far depending on what it was. And that was where was that out recently? Just yesterday, I think there was a chemical spill somewhere that had a pretty big plume and like a 4-mile evacuation zone. So knowing those things, knowing what you can be exposed to based upon your proximity, that may not seem really close, but it's close enough, What's up, Corsair, talking about the chaos of the system today. Timely, being able to get through chaos. And most important thing, training helps immensely get through chaos. Your training will help you slows down your decision making and enables you to make less decisions on the fly. And you can just go with your training if you've thought through things and trained through them. Helps immensely. But Steve's always putting out good content, right? Gnostic frequently reassesses his plans. 75% is being adaptable and flexible, and that's true if you have your preparations in place, right? Like the economic situation with the dollar is one of those things that took a lot of restructuring of all my assets, right? Like if you have anything in a bank or in a stock market, you have to restructure stuff. It takes a lot of movement, it takes a lot of decision on that. And once you get that stuff in place, then you can what are the effects if it actually happens with the food and water and everything else, the regular prep and stuff, right? And Carl the Madman has joined us. What's up, Carl? Carl might dance as good as Bob 5150, but I still give Bob 5150 the nod. I think it was because he had the hip view, Carl. He had the hips going. I couldn't see what you were doing down there. What's up, Irish? Plans never survive first contact. Right? It's true too. Always have your tertiary or flexibility built in, right? Because you just don't know what other people are going to do. When we always talk about how waiting for somebody to step out of line, right? For somebody to resist or somebody to stand up, and everybody's pointing fingers back at you, like, why aren't you? And everybody points fingers back at this guy, like, why isn't he? And it's like, you just never know what people's situations are in. And that's why they love to isolate individuals. Individuals are easy to control, groups are not. So take that for what it's worth. Gnostic says hazmat is his jam. Right? Okay. Hazmat's pretty scary because it's, short of having Mach 5 capability, it's hard to know if you don't know what's coming for you, if you don't know what's on that rail car and there's this big plume coming up, what do you do, right? Evacuate. That's why it's either shelter in place or evacuate is the standard answer from your local governments, and adjust accordingly. And then the wind shifts and changes everything, and then you get two chemicals mixing together, yada yada. You just never know. And if it gets in the rivers and kills fish and stuff like that, it can get really like that whole Ohio thing a couple years back at that deal. travesty. And it's hard to plan for complete displacement, from your area. And that goes back to the discussion years ago about bugging out and going to a bug out location. But yet many of us have preached, like, if you think you need to bug out, do it now and make your bug out location your permanent location. But how protected is your bug out location from all the threats, not just the one you think you need to leave for now? Like the get out of the city's routine. Well, like Steve's holding it down good in the city. Nothing's happened to him yet, but if you feel it's a necessary move, and do it, but you have to know what and why, and hopefully get a good place locked down, right? So flexibility, yeah, important. So hopefully this comes across somebody and encourages them to reevaluate what they're doing or validate their position and their situation. Just test your thesis, if you will, against what you thought was going to happen with what is happening. Again, kind of going back to the economic financial thing, like the central bank has held on to this ride a lot longer than I thought they could. But that doesn't mean I'm in a bad position necessarily, just because they're masters of deception and keep the faith of the people on their side, which is about the only thing keeping them up and upright and going, in my mind. So, it is what it is for any of the situations. And most people are prepped for something they hope never happens. But with we transition out of this dollar system, the scary thing is, I think I mentioned it a couple chats ago, they transition out of physical dollar to a virtual digital currency. All the people and how they're going to put this on people, and just people are not ready for it. Like, people think, oh, it's not going to happen, people aren't going to use it. Like, it doesn't matter if people want it, they're just going to force it, just like they did Social Security, just like they did welfare, just like they do all these programs where they just get people in desperate situations who have no other option, and they make it look like a good thing in particular. And you end up with pretty much all government benefits are, hey, digital currency. If you want any government benefit, think of all the people on government benefits right now. They can announce tomorrow all your government benefits are going to be digital currency, not even direct deposit. We all know direct deposit and all that stuff is electronic, and the welfare cards are electric, cards and stuff. But it goes to CBDC, And the scary part of that is they can control where you spend it, how you spend it, and all of a sudden their idea is going to be, well, see, here's how we're going to make welfare fair. Here's how we're going to make welfare efficient. This is how you make sure people can't spend it on $50 steaks and wine and beer. You hear those stories, people in line behind people that are living lavishly on welfare with lobster and steak. Well, we programmed the CBDC. You can only, get rice and beans and some milk, and it's limited then, right? Well, that sounds great, right? Let's do it. Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. And then what happens anytime you give the government more control? Here we are, all right? So that's how that stuff's going to get implemented. It's not going to be like, it's not going to require a lot of people to have it's just too easy. They already have people hook, line, and sinker into the system. And those people in the system are going to be the first victims that slowly encroach their way out to the populace. Think of all the government contractors, all the businesses, trucking, food service, and everybody else that's contracted with the government. Sorry, you can't do business with us unless you accept this digital currency. And businesses are going to be like, well, I got to keep the lights on, and I got to keep employees, and why aren't you just going to sign up? So all your government contracts trickling down to the states. You know how much funding the federal government gives to the states? Whew. So the numbers are astounding, and it's kind of depressing when you think about it, how quickly it can be implemented with very little resistance. And it'll be just like when they took gold in 33 and silver in 64, and they removed the gold window in 71, and all these other things that they've done financially. They kind of went off without a real fight. So prepare accordingly. You know what that's going to mean, what it can mean to you in particular. The big question is how does that tie into the mark of the beast, which has kind of been always a concern of. I mean, it's going to happen, but how does it happen, and what does it mean to you is what you have to really worry about. You know, so that is what it is, folks. I'm going to check out here as we maneuver for the hinterlands. I try to stay away from the overbrush down next to the river so I don't have to crawl under stuff while talking to you guys, but we're just kicking it along. Hope you have a good weekend. Prep hard, live free. You know the line. Whatever you think you need to do this weekend, enjoy it. Winter's definitely coming. It's definitely fall here. We have a cool breeze instead of a hot breeze. So it's a nice fall day already. And we'll see where we go from here. But test out those thoughts. Why are you got to show? Oh, somebody else has got you. Okay. All right, Steve. Yeah, you too. Glad for checking in, guys. Got a few over here at lunchtime. Anybody that checks it on the back end, thanks for checking in. And we will see you later. Prep hard, live free.